Do not draft Victor Wembanyama in the first round of your fantasy basketball draft. Don't even draft him in the second round. For real. It's wild out here. Come on, man. I mean, in most leagues, in most mock drafts that I'm doing, I should say, I see people reaching for Victor. I've seen him go in the first round. He definitely goes at the second, and sometimes I see people take him at the third. For me, I know he's a generational talent. The most buzz we've seen about a prospect since LeBron James. So I totally get it. It makes sense. We're hyped. People were hyped about Zion, right? I would say this about Victor Wembanyama. Although I do have concerns, I believe his upside is out of this world. It's literally on another planet. He is 7'5", y'all. Some people believe he could actually lead the league in blocks this season because of his like freakish athletic ability and size. People think he can do that. I'm not one of those people. I do think he's great. I do think he'll have an impact on the league, maybe even the Spurs to some extent, but I don't believe he's going to be a top 20 fantasy basketball producer in any format. You know, that's category leagues, points leagues, roto leagues even. I don't think he's going to be that guy this season. And I'll tell you some of the reasons why. So, one of the things I would say that concern me is the fact that he's playing for the San Antonio Spurs. Greg Popovich, aka the godfather of load management. And this is his most prized possession. Tim Duncan was a catch. Kawhi Leonard was a catch. Manu Ginobili, great. Tony Parker, Victor's fellow French brother, top-notch Hall of Famer. None of those guys are as valuable to Greg Popovich as Victor Wembanyama is at this point of his career, right? So when Timmy came in as a rookie, he wasn't as valuable as Victor is for a lot of reasons. A, Victor is coming to rescue the franchise. Although San Antonio was still knocking at the door, they had David Robinson, who was an elite player. You know what I'm saying? He scored like 70 points in a game. Like, he's that guy. But with Victor, my biggest concern is him playing for Pop. What does that look like? Although Victor has the ability to contribute with rebounding, scoring, blocks, which is all great for fantasy, one thing you need in order to be successful or be a consistent fantasy basketball contributor is get on the floor. You got to be available. You got to be playing. You got to be, you got to get minutes. And I know he's going to get some, but as the season goes on and on, that might change. Back-to-backs. I don't think that Victor Wembanyama is going to be playing a whole bunch of back-to-backs, especially as we get later on in the season. Now, if for some miraculous twist of fate, the San Antonio Spurs turn into a playoff team that, gets the third seed, that could change. I don't think that's going to happen this season. I think there's a lot of room for growth for that squad. And I believe that Victor Wembanyama will sit some back-to-backs. It's just the Popovich way. I also believe that as we get later on in the season, the talk of a shutdown might start to surface. I'm just saying. And I know what you're probably thinking. Where they do that at? Why would you shut him down? Like, if that's bad for the NBA. They're not going to do that. No. We're talking about Greg Popovich, San Antonio Spurs. So someone might say, well, there's a new load management rule in place. The load management rule applies to like all-stars and first NBA, second NBA type players. Victor Wembanyama is not there, so they can rest him without any kind of penalty. Now, if he makes the All-Star game in February or whatever, I don't know if the rule applies to current year or previous years in that active season or not. But as of right now, they could rest the young man. And I think that for fantasy managers, that is not gonna work for us. So for those reasons, I am out on Victor Wembanyama this year. Now, there is a disclaimer. I am a value hunter. So if for some reason I'm late in the third, maybe even early in the fourth, let's say if he dropped to the fourth round, I would probably consider picking him up. So when I say don't draft these players, when I say a don't draft list, that's all fine and dandy for the internet. But when we think about value in a fantasy basketball draft, I never go into a draft unless someone is like injured, right? Like someone's out. I'm not drafting them. I'll likely stay away from them, especially if it's a season-ending injury, right? Someone like John Morant, for example, who's going to be out for a big amount of, a huge portion of the early season, even for the right price, I would grab him. But for Victor, it's someone I would look at only if it was tons of value there. Do not draft him in the first round, y'all. Do not get hyped. Do not make that mistake. Don't be a San Antonio Spurs fan that makes that decision and in turn ruins their chances at bringing home a fantasy basketball championship this year. Don't do it to yourself. Second round, same thing. Stay away from him. Now that you know who not to draft, what I want you to do is play the waivers, set your lineups, and check out the next episode, you freaking fantasy nerd.